So it was a really nice surprise to get up this morning and find copies of the newly released documents in my inbox, in my email. So first of all, a huge shout out and a thank you to the person that sent me those. You know who you are awesome, and I'm very appreciative. Now, I spent some time starting to read through these documents this morning, and I decided that the best way for me to process them is to do it this way, by putting them onto a video, because then I am reading them and focusing on them as I am reading them. Now, while there appear to be several documents, what it appears to me to be is that basically you have a number of applications for record access orders, which are the equivalent of requesting a warrant. And they're basically all written by the same person. So this is that Corporal Curl. Now, what we have to understand here is that, now I haven't been through all the documents, but it's generally standard practice that in terms of the narrative that you provide when you are putting in these applications, that's going to stay the same with each application. The only difference between the documents is basically going to be what you're applying for. So phone records or video surveillance. They're the things that are going to vary between the documents. Now, something that's really important here that needs to be noted, and I think a few people have missed the point, and I think this is part of the reason why we all got the wrong end of the stick coming from what media put out, because they didn't really explain what they were talking about in terms of the documents that had been made available. So, like I said, these documents are applications for record access order. Now, yes, I said it's a bit like an affidavit for a search, well, for a warrant. So like a warrant to get phone records and stuff like that. But there is a fundamental difference. Now, before I explain this difference, I just want to point out that this does not mean that the case is not a criminal investigation. I'll come back to that down the track. So, an affidavit for getting a warrant is basically used when you are doing a criminal investigation. So, in that affidavit, you have to create probable cause. You've got to offer enough evidence to the judge to show that you have enough cause to be digging into the records of a particular individual. In other words, you've got to prove to the judge that that individual has engaged in criminal behaviour. Now, these applications for record access orders are different. We've been told from the very beginning that this case is being investigated under the Missing Persons Act. That doesn't mean that they haven't gone beyond investigating it as missing persons. What it means is that it affects how they apply for things from the court. So with these applications for record access, they don't have to prove that an individual may have been involved in a crime. All they have to show is that they are investigating a missing person. So there is less onus in terms of providing evidence to be able to get that order. All they have to prove essentially is, we have these two children who are missing, and we believe that by getting these phone records, this will assist our investigation into what happened to these children, and this is how it will assist the investigation. So it's not the same as probable cause. There is a lesser requirement to prove your reason for wanting whatever it is you are asking for access for. Because essentially, this is about finding a missing person. And the Missing Persons Act makes it quite clear that it basically allows for access to all these sorts of records. It makes it easier to be able to access these records because there isn't that requirement to establish probable cause. All you have to establish is that this person is missing. This could help with our investigation. Now, I should probably just go over a few things relating to the Missing Persons Act again, just to offer some clarification, because I know that the argument keeps coming up as, well, they're investigating it as missing persons, not a criminal investigation. So first of all, let's talk about the definition under the Missing Persons Act of a missing person. And that is an individual whose whereabouts are unknown, has not been in contact with people who they would likely be in contact with, or an individual for whom there is reasonable fear for their safety, taking into account the circumstances of their absence. We can pretty much tick all those boxes for Jack and Lily. Now, under the Missing Persons Act, if they fit that description and cannot be located after making reasonable efforts to do so, they are then considered a missing person. So essentially, even if they believe that there is some sort of criminal involvement in the disappearance, the criteria is met here to qualify Jack and Lily as missing people or missing children, which basically gives them all this access under the Missing Persons Act. So essentially, under the Missing Persons Act, a person who is missing, the Act pretty much automatically gives access to their personal information and their records. And if that person is a minor, like Jack and Lily, then the Act also provides access to the personal information and records of custodians or someone who may, they believe, be in the company of the missing person, like the missing child. And the Act clearly states that records obtained in this way can only be used for two purposes. One purpose is for the purpose of locating the missing person, or for the purpose of a criminal investigation. So essentially, by investigating it under the Missing Persons Act, it makes it far easier to access records and information. Because on one hand, if you're looking at a probable cause document, an affidavit to get a warrant in a criminal case, then you've actually got to provide observable evidence and reliable information. You've got to come up with something concrete to show that you believe that this person is involved in a criminal act. And you can only investigate that person. So if we look at the Madeline Soto case, for example, when it came to Stephen Stearns, who was responsible for Maddie not being alive, they were able to obtain warrants because they were able to show that in his interviews he had lied, he had changed his statements. They were able to show that he had factory reset his phone twice. These were all concrete things to show that it was worth getting warrants because basically he looked shady as F. If all they had to go to the judge with was a statement by him that he dropped her off at school, and that's all they've got, the judge would say, go away, you're not getting your warrant, you can't access any of these records. But on the other hand, Canada has this brilliant Missing Persons Act, and you have variations of it wherever you go. So the Nova Scotia one is different from other areas, but it's essentially the same thing. It requires less evidence in terms of you're not trying to prove that a criminal act has occurred. All you've got to say is, this child is missing. I think that if I look at this parent's phone records, this might provide some information to help us find the child. There isn't the onus to provide concrete evidence. It is just a case of this Missing Persons Act allows you access to these records. So, when it comes to the difference between probable cause and record access request, basically the information that you are going to provide in a record access request is not going to be as detailed because you don't have to prove that you think a criminal offence has occurred. You just have to show that these children are missing and that these people were the last people with these children. So therefore, their records may be useful. So it's just giving them greater investigative avenues without them needing to provide solid, substantiated evidence. They don't have to offer up the smoking gun in this document. They just have to explain the circumstances of these children going missing. So the point here is that these documents, basically what the RCMP have done is they have released documents that are somewhat toothless. There's no need in these documents for them to include all the real nitty-gritty solid evidence that would suggest a crime. All they've got to prove in these documents is that these children are missing and that these people are essentially the closest people connected to these children. Therefore, we need records from them. So the absence of anything in these documents that would suggest guilt is simply because that is not a requirement within these documents. And this goes back to the different roles that people have in an investigation. So this Corporal Curl, clearly her role here is to basically produce these documents for the court to request records. So she's not privy to all the investigative information. She has basically watched records of interviews. She has looked at statements, and that's really all she needs to be able to create these documents. And even if she was part of the investigative team in terms of boots on the ground, looking at all the, investigating things, she doesn't have to put that information in these documents. I know I've spent a lot of time explaining this, but it seems to be a sticking point for so many people. So many people have just basically run with the information that's been provided by the Mounties in these documents and said, look, Malehya and Daniel are innocent. But what you're getting from these documents, it's like looking through a keyhole. You're not going to see the whole room. You're getting a snapshot, essentially. And you get no choice over what you see. Basically, this is not the meat and potatoes of the investigation. This is just them offering up the information that these children are missing, and therefore we need documents, we need access to records, we need information. Okay, so for those of you who haven't just given up on me and left because I've just gone on about this for some time, let's jump in and look at the first of these documents. So because it is quite a long document, it is also quite a wordy document, I actually have broken it up into sections. So in this video, you're going to get the introduction and overview part of the document, the grounds for belief, which is the case summary, and then the witness statements from Janie, Malehya and Daniel. I will leave it at that point. So the next video will start with the discussion of the polygraph examination results. I won't actually be doing an outro for this video, simply because I have effectively given myself a migraine working on this today. So I'm just trying to get this intro done now so I can whack it all together and actually get it up online for you. I have recorded the bulk of this document, but realised it was super long, so I've broken it up. So I'm basically going to ask at the start of this video if you could please hit the like button, because that gets this out into the algorithm. Also, if you're new, please subscribe, and feel free to leave as many comments as you like down below. With that said, let's just jump straight in. So she's actually combined two applications in the one document. So one is an application for record access order, and the other is an application for sealing order to protect information. And we just have the information here. Applicant, Charlene Jordan Curl, a member of the RCMP with the North East Nova Scotia Major Crime Unit, am applying for an order authorising a police officer to obtain access to or copies of the records indicated below in accordance with Section 6 of the Missing Persons Act, which I've just explained that to you, which are required for the investigation being conducted by the RCMP, North East Nova Scotia Major Crime Unit, into the whereabouts of a missing person, Lily and Jack Sullivan, the missing persons. So it's quite clear, even at the start of this document, that basically they're using the Missing Persons Act to make this requirement, meaning that essentially they don't have to provide that concrete substantiated evidence for a warrant. This is just a record request. Identifying information about the missing persons. The missing persons' names are Lily Sullivan, spelt wrong, date of birth, and Jack Sullivan, date of birth. The missing persons are minors. Don't be confused here with where it says a vulnerable person as defined in the Missing Persons Act. Obviously, the Missing Persons Act still covers minors as well. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police requires access to or copies of the records indicated in the following list. For records between Thursday, May 1st, 2025 at 2:25 p.m. and Friday, May 2nd, 2025 at 10:27 a.m. So they're basically looking for records from when the children were seen on camera on the Thursday beforehand and when they were seen by a witness, and Friday up until the point when the RCMP arrived at the property. So, and they are asking for records containing contact or identification information, telephone and other electronic communication records, including, without limiting the generality of the foregoing records related to signals from a wireless device, cell phone records, inbound and outbound text messaging records, and internet browsing history records, and GPS tracking records. So pretty much everything digital that they can get their hands on. In support of my application, I make oath and say as follows. The RCMP is conducting an ongoing investigation into the whereabouts of the missing persons, Lily Sullivan and Jack Sullivan, who reported missing on May 2nd, 2025 at 10:01am by their mother Malehya Brooks Murray. Malehya reported Lily and Jack left the house, and then you've got delayed disclosure, and believed they wandered away from home. So that would just be the address of the property there. B. On May 6 and 8, 2025, images were taken of Malehya Brooks Murray's phone and Jack and Lily's stepfather Daniel Martell's phone. Those records are currently located at the RCMP Digital Forensic Services, located at 60 Garland Avenue, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. And then you have copies of or access to records of or related to the missing persons may assist the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in locating the missing person. I believe that records of the types that are the subject of this application may exist and may be in the possession or under the control of a person. I have the following reasonable grounds to believe that records of the types that are the subject of this application may exist and may be in the possession or under the control of a person. So essentially, all she's had to say here is that copies of these records may assist with locating the missing persons. It is certainly far less than the burden of proof that is required if you are making a warrant for a criminal investigation. And then you have all this stuff that's basically information giving her credentials. Note point 7, I successfully completed the RCMP search warrant drafting course in Fort McMurray in 2015. So essentially, yeah, it is part of her role to do these kinds of documents. So I'll skip on to paragraph 9 here. So on May 2nd, 2025, 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan were reported missing from their house at 1407 Gairloch Road in Lansdowne, Nova Scotia. Lily was last seen by her mother Malehya and stepfather Daniel Martell that morning sometime, and then delayed disclosure, when she came into their bedroom. Jack had not been seen since the night before, but Malehya and Daniel heard him playing in the house that morning during the same time frame. An extensive search involving ground search and rescue was conducted between May 2nd and May 7th, but was unsuccessful. Their whereabouts are still unknown, and the investigation is continuing. So on May 6, 2025, Malehya provided her phone to police and gave signed consent for it to be searched. On May 7th, Daniel did the same. On May 9th, RCMP Digital Forensic Services provided North East Nova Scotia MCU with the images of their phones on USBs. Their phones were returned to them. So you will note here that they have not noted the software that was used, like Cellbrite or something like that. They haven't noted the level of the download. So when you download someone's phone forensically, there are multiple levels depending on just how much you need from that phone. So for all we know, this could have been just, a quick download of what was basically there currently on the phone without looking at deleted data and stuff like that. I think it does say in this document that they have got deleted data there. But what I'm saying is that we don't know the level of the download here, how deep they dug into these phones. RCMP DFS has said they will take the images already made of the phones and limit the data provided to fit within the parameters and timeframes specified in this order. They will provide new USBs with that specific data to investigators once this order is authorised. So essentially, when this was written, there was none of the forensic evidence from the phones was known at that point in time. I will just say it concerns me that they're talking about a very, very small time period for forensics on those phones. Definitions and abbreviations. All the locations and motor vehicle licence plates referred to in this information to obtain are in or registered in the province of Nova Scotia unless stated otherwise. I have added investigators' comment to explain, corroborate, further qualify or link information and to state my belief. Where these comments and beliefs are added, I have defined them with italics and the title of investigators' comment in bold. I probably should have mentioned at the start of this video, I will upload this document into my Patreon for anyone who wants a copy of it. I've already emailed copies out to other creators who may be interested. So, you know, they've already got them. I'm not treading on their toes by doing this. And you know there are so many copies floating around already. So I will drop this first document into my Patreon as soon as I upload this video. If you want a copy of it, basically you just have to join my Patreon, which is free to join, and then you can upload any documents that I pop in there, and that is also free. There is a few tiers. If you want to support my channel, there's a $1 tier and I think a $2 tier. But honestly, they're there only if you wanted to offer a little bit of financial support for my channel. If you're just joining because you want the documents, there's no cost. Okay, now she lists sources of information, which isn't hugely fascinating. So basically she's just talking about the system that they have, which is basically, by the sounds of it, your system that goes like throughout Canada. So it's system containing information obtained by the RCMP and various enforcement agencies during the course of investigations. And then we have police officers. I have relied upon information from the following police officers. So basically, she's not boots on ground. She's not in the thick of it. She's basically getting reports from officers, and this is her interpretation. I'm not going to read through the list of all the officers involved, but as you can see, it is a rather lengthy list. To me, that says that this is definitely more than just a simple missing persons investigation, and that they are doing some serious investigating. And then we get into the grounds for belief, which is essentially the meat and potatoes. On May 2nd, 2025, Pictou County RCMP were dispatched to a report of missing children in Lansdowne, Nova Scotia. The following is a summary of the dispatch information. Malehya reported her children, Lily and Jack, may have left the residence and were missing. She said they were both possibly autistic and were known to wander. She said their boots were gone. Malehya reported them missing at 10:01 a.m. The dispatch information reported police arrived at 10:27 a.m. Witness statements of step-grandmother, mother and stepfather. Janie Mackenzie provided 2 statements to police on May 2nd, 2025 and May 5th, 2025. The following is a summary of what she said. Jane Mackenzie, Janie, said Lily and Jack are her step-grandchildren. She lived in the camper on the same property as the residence from where Lily and Jack went missing. She said she saw them all week. Regarding Friday, she said the following. On Friday morning, she got up at 6 a.m. and had tea and cigarettes. Around 7 a.m, she went out and tended to her chickens and let her dog out. She went back inside and played a game on her phone. She got a call from her brother, Ron Mackenzie, at 8:48 a.m, and they talked about going to town. After she was done talking to him, she went back to bed and must have dozed off after scrolling on Facebook. She originally said she might have learned the children were gone around 8:48 a.m. before she talked to Ron, but later clarified the timeline in her second statement. So you'll notice here, we're not getting records of interviews here. We are getting a summary of a record of interview, meaning this is like, 3rd time removed. And rather than giving us the two separate records of interview, she's basically combined all the information from them, which basically opens up the possibility of incorrect information being put into this document, because she could well be, in her head, essentially translating it to how she interprets it. Meaning that if Janie said one thing in one record of interview and another thing in another record of interview, this is not necessarily going to be outlined here in this document. Her dog started barking and that woke her up. She heard Lily and Jack in the backyard playing on the swings and laughing, which of course is very different from what she's told us. Then dozed off again. She woke up again when she heard Daniel yelling for Jack and Lily. She didn't think anything of it because Jack liked to look for bugs and gets into things when he's doing that. So she thought Daniel might have been yelling at Jack for that reason. This is interesting because in her accounts that we've had, it's Jack and Lily together, and then here it's basically Jack on his own. That's very interesting. Okay, and here's where it becomes problematic that we are basically having a recount as opposed to a record of interview, because in this statement here, she says when she came outside after waking up again, she saw Malehya standing at the rock pile holding Meadow. Malehya said Jack and Lily were missing for about 20 minutes and she had called 911. Why is this significant? Well, according to Belinda or Chaucer, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, that can that we see in all the images, that wasn't there when they went there on the Saturday. That was built up afterwards. So we don't know if this is something that Janie has stated or if this is a misinterpretation by the person writing this document. And yes, it happens. If you followed the Maddie Soto case with me, there were numerous times when I pointed out discrepancies between reports that were written by police officers and the actual interviews. Janie got her coats and boots and walked around looking for them. Daniel was searching for them. Her brother called again around 10:19 a.m. after all this happened. Malehya called her mother, who came to the house. When her mother arrived, Malehya talked to her and said, "I told you they had autism." Okay. Either something has been lost in the telling here, or Malehya just made a really, really odd comment. Family members started to show up. One of her brothers went to get an ATV and they continued searching. Janie said for the rest of Friday she searched for the kids with her family members. Janie provided some background information. Janie was concerned about the timeline because there was no way the kids could have walked from the yard up to the road where Daniel was in the vehicle without her seeing them. Again, I'm not sure if this just is a misinterpretation of something that this officer has heard, or if Janie is saying that in fact Daniel was down on the road or up on the road somewhere in a vehicle. I mean, it seems to match with her account of seeing Malehya and then she got her boots and coat on and then walked up the hill and ran into Daniel. And it seems to me that what she is actually saying here is that had they been on the property between where she left her RV and where she ran into Daniel, that she would have come across them. But the way this is written leaves a lot to interpretation. Janie said when the kids were in the yard, she usually watched them the most. Yeah, I have questions about that. She said the kids were in school on Monday and Tuesday because the bus picked them up right outside their house. Wednesday was an in-service day and they were home, but they went to their grandmother's house to do laundry and didn't get home until 10 p.m. Thursday they didn't go to school, but they were in the yard playing through the day and she gave them snacks. Yeah, right. Yep, I believe you, Janie. Janie said Malehya and Daniel are having financial difficulties. And we heard that from Wade, so it seems that it is common knowledge. Janie said Jack would not go for a walk on his own. She said she, Jack, Lily and Daniel went for walks in the woods all the time, and they had to carry Jack sometimes because he got tired and would just sit in one place. Janie said she does not believe the kids are in the woods. So again, now she's talking about Malehya, and she's talking about, basically she's giving a summary. This is not a record of interview, this is a summary of the information given by Malehya. So if there are discrepancies, she's not highlighting them here. Malehya provided 4 statements to police. 2 statements were provided on May 2nd, 2025, one on May 3rd, 2025, and one on May 4th, 2025. The following is a summary of what she said. Can I just point out, that is a lot of interviews over a 2-day period. When it comes to missing children, they're going to get every bit of information that they can from the parents straight up. If they are going back and repeating the process, basically getting additional statements and interviewing them again, that is saying that there are discrepancies. That is saying that they have questions about things that they were told. So regardless of what we're being told about the polygraph, right here is a little bit of important information for us. They were uncertain about the credibility of what Malehya was telling them. And like I said, because this is a summary, she's basically just pulled together the facts from all the different interviews. We're not going to know what the discrepancies were. So on the day Jack and Lily went missing, she heard them playing in the other room and was going in and out of sleep. Lily came in the room around something a couple of times. Daniel was sleeping the whole time and didn't really wake up. She didn't hear them anymore around this time. Can I just point out, if you're going in and out of sleep, then you're not going to know if your partner was asleep the whole time, because they could have been going in and out of sleep too, and maybe they were awake when you were asleep. So here you get an interesting discrepancy in the statement. She got up and they couldn't find them, so they called 911. We know Malehya called 911, but she hasn't mentioned anything here about waking Daniel up. It's just she got up and then they couldn't find them. Like I said, I think that in terms of taking information from this document as gospel, we have to recognise that these are summaries. These are not records of interview. The police came and got statements. Everything was frantic searching for them. Malehya did not think this would take days. Malehya discussed what happened earlier in the week. The kids went to school on Monday and Tuesday, but Wednesday was a professional development day, so they were off. She kept them home on Thursday and Friday. Malehya said she doesn't remember what they did on Wednesday. Specifically, she gave a detailed description of what happened on Thursday. Malehya kept Lily and Jack home from school on Thursday morning because they had a cough. She contacted the school through the app at 6:18 a.m. The kids got up and came into their bedroom. Meadow was already up and in bed with Malehya. They got up and headed out to get the kids breakfast. They wanted the TV on and they wanted to play with their toys. Everyone woke up around 9 a.m. Malehya said she tidied the house throughout the day and looked after the kids. Yeah, well, it doesn't sound like the house was very tidy by Friday. She said she also scrolled her phone at one point because she was overstimulated. Okay. She had something in New Glasgow in the afternoon on Thursday, and she and Daniel went with all the kids. Clearly, this woman hasn't heard of proofreading. They drove her 2017 white Nissan Pathfinder. They went to the big stop for gas, and she thought they might have gotten the kids' bagels at Tim Hortons. Might have. Wouldn't you know? Honestly. Daniel stayed in the car with the kids when she got something. Then they went to Starbucks drive-through before going home. In the evening, she was going to do some cleaning, but she was too tired. The kids were watching a show on TV. She put Lily and Jack to bed first, then Meadow, and then went to bed herself. Malehya said they were late getting to bed that night and went around 9 p.m. They usually go around 7 p.m. Lily was wearing a pink sweater and pink pyjamas with white shapes and a Barbie top, with pink socks. Her hair was shoulder length and her backpack was beside her. Jack was wearing black sweatpants, a t-shirt and a diaper, as he was only partially trained. Daniel stayed up. He said he was going to clean the house for her, but it wasn't clean when she got up, so she doesn't know what he did. Normally he did little projects around the house at night and fixed things. Essentially meaning that Daniel was someone who didn't really sleep that much. I wonder why that is. Malehya said she was not woken up throughout the night and does not know when Daniel came to bed. She continued by giving a detailed description of what happened on Friday. On Friday morning, Malehya's alarm went off at 6 a.m. and another one at 6:15 a.m, which was when she used the school app to mark them out sick for the day. Malehya then went back to sleep. Daniel and Meadow were still sleeping and there was no other noise in the house. Malehya heard the kids playing in their bedroom around whatever time. They woke Meadow up, so she took her into bed and turned the TV on for her, then faded in and out of sleep. The kids were giggling, laughing and talking to each other. The kids were in the room right next to theirs, so they were loud. Around whatever time, she heard silence and told Daniel she didn't hear the kids. They got up together and checked in the living room and outside. Then started yelling for them. When they didn't hear any answer, she called 911 at 10 a.m. So you checked one room in the house and you went outside the house and called them, and then you called 911. You didn't check anywhere else on the property? You didn't check any other rooms? You didn't go and ask Janie if she'd heard them? She had to turn off Wi-Fi to get the bars of cell service and call from one spot in the house where there is good service. Daniel walked around yelling for them to see if he would get a reply, and eventually took her Nissan Pathfinder to go look for them in the woods. So that doesn't match his account either. Janie was also out looking for them. She had the baby, so she couldn't go look. Here's a thought. 2 of your children are missing, and you'd rather sit on your ass with the child that you know where that child is and let other people go and search for your children? I know that the relationship between her and Janie was rather piss poor, but it says a lot that she was not prepared to ask Janie to look after Meadow so she could go looking herself. I mean, when you listen to the way Janie talks about those children, it really does sound like Janie did not like them. So basically, if she was out there calling for them, wouldn't you think that they would be more likely to come if it was Malehya out there calling for them? Just a thought. Malehya said she did not think the kids had changed their clothes from the night before, and Lily's backpack was gone, so she assumed she had it with her. How could you not know if your children had changed their clothes? Because it's not like a 6-year-old and 4-year-old are going to change out of their clothes, go put them in the laundry hamper and then put some clean clothes on. If they'd changed out of their clothes, you would see them. And, she claims that basically their clean clothes were still in the laundry basket because she hadn't had time, or she hadn't had the energy to actually pull them out of the basket, which, she's essentially implying here that what the kids were wearing was pretty much all that was available to them because everything else had been washed and hadn't been unpacked. Because, she didn't say that, well, there was clean clothes in the bedroom. She basically said she put them to bed in their filthy, grotty clothes because she didn't want to unpack the clean clothes that were in the laundry hamper. So you would know. If they had changed clothes, I mean, heck, you have a teenager going and looking in the laundry hamper, and half the clothes in that laundry hamper, those lovely clean clothes, are suddenly going to be unfolded and scrunched and pushed all over the place while they dig down for what they're looking for. So, a 4 and a 6-year-old, if they're looking for fresh clothes in the laundry hamper, they're not going to lift them out carefully and pull out what they want and then lift everything back in. So this comment that she doesn't think they changed their clothes, well, she should know. She described the backpack as a corduroy cream-coloured backpack with strawberries on it. Lily and Jack's boots were gone. Lily was wearing size 13 rainbow pink boots and Jack was wearing size 10 blue dinosaur boots. Regarding their normal routine, she said the following. She clarified on a regular morning when the kids go to school, she's up at 6:15 a.m. as she gets the kids ready, fed and their teeth brushed before having them out to the bus by 7:28 a.m. The bus stopped in their driveway. So can we maybe think that perhaps the reason the kids didn't go to school on Friday, if indeed they were still around Friday morning, was more because Malehya couldn't be bothered getting out of bed? Because it seems like that particular morning she decided to have a massive sleep-in. She also clarified their sleeping arrangements. Meadow, Daniel and Malehya share a room. Lily and Jack also share a room, but they divided it in two because they would be up at all hours of the night when it was open concept. And then we have a reference to Daniel's children. They do not normally live with them, they stay with their mum. They were not there all the week Lily and Jack went missing. Regarding the children in general, Malehya said the following. Lily and Jack did not have a relationship with their biological father. He had not seen them since October 2021, when Malehya left him because of something. He did not pay child support. And we know that he did actually pay child support up until the point when he lost his job 12 months prior to that. Okay, regarding Daniel, Malehya said the following. They've been together 3 years. And she said a heck of a lot more, but we don't know what that is. Daniel worked every Monday at a hardwood sawmill. They were having a hard time getting wood in, so he only worked 1 day a week. She said when he was not working, Daniel would help his mother with building the fence and bringing in wood because they use wood heat. She said he is an involved parent and would help her, especially when she was overwhelmed. He was not aggressive with the kids, but had a voice they listened to. There was never any physical discipline. See, again, this is where a statement of, or a record of interview would be far more useful, because I would like to know if that was a question that she was asked directly. Is there any physical discipline? Or if that is something that she offered up, unprompted. I'm going to presume that this V1 personal information, this big bit that's blacked out, is the discussion of Malehya basically leaving and blocking Daniel. They discussed what happened earlier that day. Malehya said she went to the police command post to see what was happening firsthand. And then it's redacted. She said there is currently a lot of conflict between her and Daniel's sides of the family. She provided the following information. Daniel's family wanted her to bring the baby and stay with them. We know she's referring to Logan here. But she thought the correct decision was to stay with her mother. So this sounds like what I had originally suspected, that perhaps Logan was trying to strong-arm Malehya into basically taking Logan to her house. And Cindy stepped in and went, well, actually, we're family. Daniel pulled her aside and tried to convince her to stay, but she told him she was going with her mother. Again, it's pretty poor to see professional documents that have not been proofread. Anyway, moving on. She did not know of any conflicts in their family lives that would cause the children to be missing. Sure. Malehya said she had not spoken with Daniel since May 3rd, 2025. She said she blocked him and had not opened his Snapchat messages. Malehya provided a fifth statement to Constable McIntyre on May 9th, 2025. The following is a summary. So it's interesting that she's combined the first 4 interviews into one summary and then put the 5th one as a separate summary. Malehya again recounted what happened on Thursday night before the kids went missing. She said she put Jack and Lily to bed and then she went to bed with Meadow. Then it's all redacted. She continued to what happened Friday morning, which was the same account she provided in her previous statements. In addition to what was already said, she provided the following new information. She said when Daniel was looking for the kids, he opened the front door. He put a wrench on top of the door the night before and it didn't fall down. So Daniel said they must have gone out the back sliding door. The door was shut, but the kids would normally leave it open if they went outside because it was so heavy. There are times when they would close it. I have questions about that. Malehya said Lily and Jack did not normally wander on their own. They would if were there, but not by themselves. And I'm thinking that she's referring to Daniel's kids because we have that account from Janie where she talks about them basically going up to their little cubby house in the woods when her grandchildren are there. Malehya said she had a conversation with Janie in the yard and told her the kids were missing. Janie got ready and went to look for them. She told Malehya she heard them outside playing and Daniel yelling. Malehya said she does not think she opened her phone or sent any messages around that time. She did call her mother and her grandmother after she called police. She said she used Text Plus because it allowed Wi-Fi calling. She since deleted the app because she doesn't need it anymore. She did not use the Text Plus to call 911 because it does not let you. Now that's interesting because there's questions about how quickly Cindy got there. And it looks like she deleted the app, meaning that she was making it harder for them to discover what time she contacted her mother. Just noting that. Malehya said during the day Daniel had erratic behaviour towards the police officers, she thought. This is after she took off, so it sounds like after whatever happened when she basically left the place with her mother, sounds like her and Daniel were both trying to fit each other up. He was very standoffish and Daniel thought they weren't doing enough. Honest to goodness, if I was this woman's boss, before this was allowed to be submitted to the courts, she would be getting it back from me with big red circles everywhere, asking for clarification. He was very standoffish and Daniel thought they weren't doing enough. Is she saying here that this is what Daniel has said in his interview? Or is she saying here that Malehya said Daniel thought that? Because there's no clarification on this. And if she is inserting something that Daniel said into her account of Malehya's interviews, then that is really poor writing and really poor reporting. And yes, I know some people get annoyed with me when I point out things like this in documents, but to me, I think there needs to be a certain professionalism when it comes to any sort of legal professional document. And this shouldn't be any different. Show me another profession that would allow such sloppy writing in a final copy of an important document. Malehya said she was up late on Friday night. She put Meadow to bed and then stayed up. Daniel came in and just went to sleep. She thought he was tired from searching all day. She said she only got a couple of hours sleep. It was after 3 a.m. the last time she checked her phone, and she was up again around 6 a.m. Constable McIntyre asked Malehya to look in her phone to confirm her timeline for Thursday. She provided the following information. At 6:29 a.m, Malehya received a message to confirm the kids were marked absent from school. Malehya said it was a slow morning. They didn't do a lot other than get breakfast, watch TV and play. Malehya had a video call from her mother Cindy at 3:37 p.m. on Thursday to see the kids. Cindy would have seen the kids on the phone. Of course, we only have Cindy and Malehya's words on that, because obviously when you do a video call, the actual call itself is not recorded. Malehya went through and showed Constable McIntyre her banking transactions on Thursday to see if they could narrow down the timeline, but she said Daniel used his card for their purchases that day. Malehya showed Constable McIntyre her Google Map timeline, which tracked her movements on Thursday. She said she went to the following places. They left home at 12:10 p.m. and drove for 39 minutes. Then from 12:49 to 1:27 p.m, Malehya was shown at a missing visit, which she thought was probably her grandmother's house. They went to Dollarama at 1:44 p.m. She said she went in and grabbed a few things. They went to Lawton's at 2:48 p.m. She remembered they picked up some Tylenol and diaper rash cream for Meadow because she was teething. So we've got an hour's gap there. That's interesting. They drove between 2:52 and 3:11 p.m. and arrived home. That evening she got the kids something to eat and they were watching TV. She said they might have gone outside sometime to play. Wouldn't you know? I'm sorry. Surely you would know if your kids had gone outside to play. But they came in when it was getting dark. So they might have, but they definitely came in when it was getting dark. So that means they did go outside to play. And yet apparently Malehya passed a polygraph test. She got their teeth brushed and they wore their clothes to bed because all the clothes were still in bags from when she washed them at her grandmother's house. And she hadn't gotten around to putting them away, meaning that, of course, they were wearing the same clothes the following morning when they went missing. Because otherwise she would have noticed had they been in those bags looking for clothes. Lily and Jack were hyper and excited, but she got them tucked into bed around 10 p.m. Jack had his blanket and his dinosaur, and she shut his door. Lily went to bed with her backpack. That's interesting. I would really love to hear the actual interview there. Malehya and Meadow went to bed once Meadow was asleep. She put her in her crib and went to sleep herself. The reason I said I'd find that interesting is because she's saying that she shut his door, not actually talking about Lily, when apparently they were sharing the same room that just had a divider. Anyway, moving on. There's a lot in here that I think after I've had a bit of processing time, I'll be coming back and talking about a few particular things from this document. Malehya and Constable McIntyre looked at the Google Map timeline for Wednesday on Malehya's phone and learned the following about her day. The whole family left the house at 12:51 p.m. and went to the Irving Oil in Westville, where they got $20 of fuel. They drove to Malehya's grandmother's house and arrived at 2:01 p.m. At 3:18 p.m. she went to Access Nova Scotia in Truro Heights with Meadow to get a plate for her car. Daniel and the kids stayed at her grandmother's house. They went to Ultramar in Millbrook to get gas, and she stopped to get a vape for Daniel at High Grade. So, in terms of the vape, is MJ legal there? Or is that just like a tobacco vape? Because reading that gives me flashbacks to the timeline given by Candace when Summer Wells went missing and she went and got edibles for her mother and stuff like that. Which begs the question, are edibles legal in Canada? I have no idea whatsoever. Because if they are, is this something that the children could have gotten into? At 7:54 p.m. they went to Walmart and picked up groceries. The whole family went together. They stopped at Truro and then went to her grandmother's at 9:19 p.m. to drop off her bank card. So essentially her grandmother funded their grocery shopping for them by the sounds of it. At 10:19 p.m. they arrived at home for the night. Malehya provided more background on their living situation. She said they moved to the trailer on Daniel's mother's property. And then there's a bunch of redacted stuff. But here's an interesting tidbit for you. Malehya said Daniel's father owned over 100 acres of land out near Barney's River, which is a wooded lot. I would like to know if that has been searched. Daniel provided two statements to police on May 2nd, 2025 and May 4th, 2025. The following is a summary of what he said. Daniel said Malehya took the baby Meadow and left with her family. She blocked him on social media and he couldn't get in contact with her. Daniel said he rarely used to check his phone, but has done so more in the last 3 days since the kids went missing. Yep, because he had to keep track of what everyone was saying about him on social media, didn't he? When asked about Friday morning, Daniel said the following. Daniel said he was in the bedroom with Malehya and Meadow, who were in the bed with him. Lily came in a couple of times, but he did not check his phone to see the time. The television was on and it was daylight outside. Lily didn't say anything. She would just open the door and look in and then leave again. She did that 2 or 3 times. They used to remind her not to rush into the room because they wanted to make sure Meadow got a good sleep. Sometimes the kids would wake her up. Daniel said he got up and he didn't hear the kids. He thought it was only a few minutes since Lily last poked her head in the door. He went out and saw the back sliding door was closed. The kids didn't usually close it when they went outside. Their boots were gone. I have questions. Daniel ran around the house looking for them, but they were not there. Malehya got up when he got up as well and was looking of the kids. Oh my goodness. Daniel ran outside, but they were not in the yard and he couldn't see them. He got in the car and he drove around, then ran around in the woods looking for them. He searched for hours. He said he did not look at the time and he didn't even take his phone. A bit like Stephen Stearns, really, isn't it? he forgot to take his phone when he allegedly dropped Maddie off at school, which he didn't do, as we know. And then when he was running errands in the afternoon, he also forgot to take his phone, which we know now is the time when he took Maddie and left her basically in the bamboo out in the middle of nowhere in St Cloud. Because we all know they can't trace your movements if you don't have your phone with you. I mean, if you were going to be out for hours searching for missing children, wouldn't you want to take your phone with you just in case they turned up home so that their mother could ring you and say, "It's all good, they're here, come back"? Because that would be preferable to being out searching for like 12 hours or something, and to get home and be told, "Oh, they came home 10 minutes after you left." Regarding Thursday, Daniel said the kids did not go to school because Malehya thought Lily was sick. Different story again. They all left home around lunchtime and got gas at the Circle K in Alma. Then went through the Tim Hortons drive-through for food. Daniel said he thought the kids were sleeping. They drove to Truro and went to Malehya's grandmother's house to do laundry and spent most of the day there. They went shopping at Walmart and got food. They left her grandmother's around 9:30 p.m. and got home around 10:30 p.m. Then put the kids to bed. Daniel said he thought Malehya put them to bed. He didn't know what they were wearing because they were underneath the covers when he checked on them. So that's the Wednesday. Daniel said he thought he went to bed fairly early that night and didn't wake up until it was light the next morning. He remembered getting an email that Malehya had marked the kids absent from school on his phone at around 6:18 a.m. on Friday. Daniel later said Malehya had to get something on Thursday between 12:40 and 1:40 p.m, so he thought they must have done that before they went to Truro. Daniel could not remember if they went to town on Wednesday or not. He said he had a conversation with someone who was helping but he thought that was on Tuesday. Okay. Regarding their family situation, Daniel said they used to live with Malehya's grandmother, but they moved They moved to Daniel's mother's house, and Daniel's mother moved into the camping trailer on the same property. Daniel's uncle and father lived down the road. He has a good relationship with his family. Daniel said Lily and Jack were sheltered, but they always watched them outside, including his mother. His mother would always tell them if they didn't have coats or boots on. He said disciplining the house was just talking to the kids and telling them why they could not do things. Daniel said the kids did not listen to Malehya, they only listened to him. He said they did not physically discipline the kids. Again, I would like to hear a record of interview, or I would like to hear some clarification on this. Did he offer this information himself, or was this a question that he was asked? If it's a question that was asked of both of them, it shows you what investigators may have been thinking. Because 2 kids going missing without a trace is certainly something that is incredibly unusual. Now, we have an investigator's comment. I believe Daniel was mistaken when he said they went to Truro on Thursday. Based on Malehya's statements and her Google timeline, they went to Truro on Wednesday, and she had the something or other on Thursday. Why do you need to editorialise? You should just be giving a straight recount, a retelling, essentially, of what occurred in the interviews and what was said. So I hope she hasn't tweaked a few things in what she said in this summary to try and make them fit with what she thinks they should have been saying. Because I have never come across a report where you have an investigator editorialising a summary of an interview. Daniel provided a third statement to police on May 6, 2025. The following is a summary of what he said. Daniel said when the kids went missing, Malehya's mother showed up extremely quickly, even though she was over an hour away. He wasn't sure when Malehya called her mother and said it might be a good idea to check her phone to see the time. Daniel said his Google Maps would have his location, and he always kept his location on for Malehya, so she knew where he was, and she did the same for him. Coercive relationship much? He said on the second day he had cell phone service when he was searching, and his Google would show his locations. He said he used Google Maps to get out of the woods one time, and he sent Malehya a picture of it. So very convenient that on the first day he didn't have his phone, so there's no record of where he was all day, the first day that those children were reported missing. Daniel talked about the areas he searched on the first and second day. He said he went into town and got his friends, Adam and Chance, and they helped him search on the second day. Daniel said he thought Lily and Jack would only come to him because they were attached to him. Daniel said they never listened to Malehya, only him. Honestly, he makes it sound like they're pet dogs or something. Or, they only come for me because they like me. They don't like her. Now this one needs a flashing red light while I read it. Daniel said he's trying to be completely truthful and tell police everything, but it is hard to remember everything exactly as it happened. Daniel said he's having a hard time because his whole family is gone. Again, is this because he was asked, why are your statements not matching up? Or is this something that he offered up on his own? When asked in detail about Friday morning, Daniel reiterated what he said in his earlier statements and provided the following further details. When Lily was sticking her head in their room, he could hear Jack in the kitchen in the background. He did not see him, but he was usually loud and clumsy, so it was easy to hear him. So he's in a different room to what Malehya was saying. They like to eat and snack all the time and sometimes stash food away. That's a red flag to me. I'm going to come back to that in a separate video. Daniel said when he went out to look for the kids in the house and realised they weren't there, he went back into his bedroom to get dressed before going outside to look for them. Daniel confirmed the kids could not go out the front door because he had jammed a wrench or a bolt in there to make sure the door didn't open. You'd think he would know. He said he does that most nights because there's a bear that used to hang around outside. That morning he had to rip the door open to get out, and the metal piece fell on the floor. So he knew there was no way they could have gone out that way. There's another red flag in that. Saying he had to rip the door open to get out. If it is something that you do habitually, to jam a wrench or a bolt in the door to make sure that it doesn't open, then you are habitually going to remove it before attempting to open the door. So him saying that he had to rip the door open, this makes me think that actually this is a fabricated story to explain perhaps some damage to the front door. He took the car and went around to look. When he came back, the RCMP were there and told him not to go back into the woods. So either she's missing part of the narration here, or there's an inconsistency from Daniel. By that time, his mum was there with his Uncle Ron, and he waited with them. There was a time when he was looking in the woods, he thought he heard a scream that sounded like Jack and Lily. Again, that sounds like BS because it's either going to sound like Lily or it's going to sound like Jack. It's not going to sound like both of them. I'm sure they weren't some co-joined being that spoke for each other with the one voice. At one point on Friday before dark, he took a half-hour video on his phone of where he was searching. It was a steep part of a hill, and he does not think Jack and Lily could have gone that way. That's just odd. I don't know what to think about that. Why would you take a video of an area that you're pretty certain that the kids wouldn't have gone that way in the first place? Was he trying to prove that he was searching? And if so, why would you feel the need to prove that you were searching? He was using a flashlight on his phone to try and see in culverts, but he didn't see anything in the water. They talked about what happened on Wednesday and Thursday. Daniel initially had the days mixed up, but then he confirmed through online banking on his phone that they spent Wednesday in Truro with Malehya's grandmother and went to run errands, including Malehya's something on Thursday. In addition to what he provided in his previous statements, he said the following about Thursday. Daniel said he had Facebook messages from Malehya at around 12:07 p.m. She was talking about McDonald's toys. He said he might have been out in the yard playing with Jack and Lily when she sent those messages. Okay, this guy really needs to give up on the rugs, because clearly he doesn't know what he's doing when. They all went to Malehya's grandmother's place and got there around 12:50 p.m. Malehya went to get something and he stayed in the car with the kids. All three kids were sleeping, so it was quiet. He looked at his banking information on his phone and remembered they went to Dollarama and Lawton's on the way home. They all went into Dollarama and only Malehya went into Lawton's. Daniel said Malehya would have talked to her mother later in the day because her mother called 2 or 3 times every day. That is excessive. Her grandmother also probably called. Daniel checked his Google Maps timeline and detailed Thursday as well. The only new information provided was that they stopped at Acropole to pick up poutines. They talked about his relationship with Malehya. He said the following. Daniel said he always takes his phone when he leaves the house, and his timeline will say he was home. Huge red flag. Just because his phone was home doesn't mean that he was.